Sir David Amess.
I do not have a military background. It's very obvious if you look at my shoes, and according to my wife, I'm terribly untidy. The House of Commons, though, has many military and foreign affairs experts. But I remember that day very clearly, of the 18th of March 2003. My then party leader, in those days we seemed to have quite a regular turnover of party leaders, he was called to number 10 Downing Street and was given a briefing. And he came back and addressed the Conservative Parliamentary Party meeting, and I listened very carefully to what he said. But my gut instinct was that this was wrong for us to get involved in the conflict. I then, as colleagues who were there have mentioned earlier, gathered in the House, a packed chamber. And I listened very carefully to what the then Prime Minister at that dispatch box said. And he clearly told us that within 45 minutes there were weapons of mass destruction which would reach this country. And I have to say to other members who have spoken, I did believe him. I really did believe him. So I changed the way in my mind I was going to vote, and I will regret that decision until the day I died. So following on from what my honourable friend said earlier, when it came to the vote on Syria, I didn't discuss it with any colleagues, but I dare say, the honourable member for Southend West, we're taking for granted he's going to support the government. Well, they were surprised because I decided to use my own judgment and not make the same mistake again. And I was one of the 30 members of Parliament who voted against that particular involvement in conflict. And just to pick up on what one of the honourable members said earlier, it wasn't 6 Conservative members of Parliament who voted against the war. I think it was 16 to 18. And oh, how I wished I had done what they did. Now, I just feel that it's unfair on others. Madam Deputy Speaker, I pay tribute to the noble Lords Hurd and Dykes, who have done a lot of work on this. And I'm in complete despair that this House has suddenly burst into life on this issue. It happened 2 Prime Minister's questions ago when the father of the House mentioned the issue and other members chimed in behind it. And I am puzzled why the government hasn't done anything about this. I have to say to the House, in my naivety, I thought it was a clever ploy that we were going to have the report announced just before the general election. Well, that clearly is not the case, and it is absolutely pathetic that this House is going to allow that situation to prevail. Because I've taken advice from the clerks in the House, and having asked questions about this since 2010, I've been given the same answers. I've always been told that the timing of the delivery is a matter for the inquiry, as it is independent of the government. Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, there are 3 things this House can do. We can move a motion for an unopposed return of the documents to Parliament, as was the case with, for instance, the Scott Report in 1996 and the Hutton Inquiry in 2004. This was to ensure that the report enjoys the protection of the Parliamentary Papers Act 1840, which would make it subject to privilege. This would bring the lengthy Maxwellisation process to an end without opening the prospect of defamation that was raised early in the debate proceedings, enabling this report to be published quickly. So that's something the House could do. Secondly, we could ensure that the report is published as soon as possible to convert the Chilcot into an inquiry under the Inquiries Act 2005. This can be done under Section 15 of that Act and would require the consent of the then Prime Minister who put in place the original inquiry. The government would then issue new terms of reference, including a time frame which is currently unspecified. Although the requirements of the Act are for warning letters to be sent out to those subject to criticism, it might be arguable that this requirement has already been satisfied by virtue of the Maxwellisation letters which have already been sent. Finally, this House could adopt emergency legislation to put the Chilcot inquiry under special provisions and to include in those provisions immunity from suit, immunity from process and a deadline. £9 million has been spent on this inquiry, of public money, and this inquiry has been delayed over and over again. And I much regret that since 1997, the mother of all parliaments has lost much of its power. But it is quite wrong to say that nothing can be done to stop this report being published before the general election. Huge loss of life has happened as a result of this inquiry. And it is absolutely, as a result of the war, it is absolutely naive to suggest that as a result of our involvement in Iraq, there hasn't been huge destabilisation of the area, and to suggest that there is no link whatsoever with what is going on with Islamic State and all the developments since then. There is no doubt at all that when we went to war, there was no regime change in place, there was no plan as to what would happen in the future. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, I do hope that Parliament will not accept the fact that the government is not able to do something about this. They are able to do something, and I've given 3 practical suggestions as to how this report could be published before the general election.